Oh my gosh, a net million subscribers. Look, Ma, I'm a real YouTuber now. I say net because over my 8 or so years of serious YouTube, I've lost a couple 100,000 subs too. Must have posted cringe or started focusing too much on Pokemon or something. Anyway, I have no idea what to do for a 1 million subscriber special. I didn't even do a 100,000 or a 500,000 subscriber special, like, at all. But whatever. I knew whatever I do, it should be something for the dedicated viewers, the fans, the long-term subscribers, the ones who care the most. So what better time than now to do a Draw My Life? Remember those? So here's the definitive guide to Lockstin lore, aka Draw My Life Lockstin Edition. And I've got hacked comics here to do the drawing because I'd like it to look better than my stickmen and blobs. Also, this is the abridged version. The first version was over 40 minutes, so if you are that interested, there's a link to an unlisted video down in the description. Thank you so much for watching our videos. And it is our now. Team now. Has been for a couple years, but yeah, I don't want to take credit for all this because,
So, in the beginning, I was born. I grew up in Northern California. Actual Northern California, not the Bay Area. No. Way up there in the rural land. Overall, though, despite my location, I do consider myself very lucky. I had a very loving family. My parents were not perfect, of course, but they were amazing. And eventually, 5 years after being born, they brought my younger brother into the world as well. Though we never really got along much until much later. The classic, "My younger brother is so annoying and childish" thing, I'm sure. The first decade of my life was nice, all things considered. Parents had good enough jobs, and we were close to my grandparents who would watch me a lot. It was very nice. Though I did find myself in hospitals and urgent care facilities pretty frequently. Thankfully, I wasn't a cancer kid or anything that bad, but I had frequent enough hernias, allergic reactions, esophagus swelling shut due to poison oak, lungs failing due to chronic bronchitis every single winter until my mid-teens, though by that point it was just replaced with asthma. Extreme constipation, even my intestines rupturing. My very earliest memory of gaming, though, was playing Tiny Toon Adventures on the Super Nintendo at Grandma's house. And noting my interest in video games, my parents eventually bought me quite a few educational video games to play on their Windows 95 computer. So, gaming started early, as did education because of these games. From 1st to about 4th grade, I would spend time with the grade above, for math time specifically, as I was way into math. My spelling and grammar suffered though, a trait I still deal with to this day. This was the time period where my love of gaming really first blossomed. And at the peak of Pokemon fever in the West, I was one of those kids, obsessed with Pokemon. Though at the time, it was just the anime. I saw the Metapod episode while at a friend's house, and I loved it ever since. We didn't have cable TV at home though, so Mom bought some episodes on VHS, and I'd watch those a lot. Over and over. I'm pretty sure I have those episodes memorized. Eventually, in 3rd grade or so, I finally got to experience my first Pokemon game, Pokemon Silver. It was my first Nintendo system. By this time, I was definitely a PC gamer, though we had an original PlayStation as well. Loved me some Crash Bandicoot and Croc, but this Game Boy felt so much more personal. And this Pokemon game, I was so immersed. Honestly, I felt like I was reading more playing Pokemon than reading books. And I guess this immersion that I had is what really planted the seeds into what I do on YouTube today. I grew up a Jehovah's Witness, and also I am positive that growing up as a witness is a major part of why my childhood was so painless, for the most part. Like it was easy, it was loving. My dad was an elder in it even, sort of a volunteer pastor equivalent. He would take turns giving talks and directing meetings with the others. There was very little drama in my life because everyone in my life was kind and caring for the most part. They taught me many valuable lessons on how to be nice and show respect, show patience, be a leader, listen to your teachers, do well in school, do what Jesus would do. And gosh, I have so many VeggieTales episodes memorized too, got those on VHS. Being a witness definitely got me ahead in early life, for sure. Being a well-behaved little kid always makes teachers appreciate you greatly. And plus, I was a bit of a perfectionist in school too. I was one of those gifted kids, the do no wrongs, who do all of their homework and had perfect grades. Now let's see. I was sort of into skateboarding and rollerblading as a preteen too. I wanted to do much more than what I was able to do, but we lived on a dirt road, so I didn't have much opportunity. But that interest sort of came crashing to an end when I broke my ankle. Going way too dangerously fast on roller skates, I slammed straight into a wall and wound up kicking my own shin with the same foot that the shin is attached to. I was a extremely acne-ridden teen. Everybody goes through fundamental changes in high school. That's sort of the point. And at this point, I was still that gifted kid with perfect grades all the way up until, I think, junior year when I dropped the ball on chemistry. I don't think I liked the teacher. But either way, my grades were straight A's and an F. I think I had a B in PE also, but yeah. I took on a lot of technical and leadership roles at that school. The school was set up to teach about collaboration in a business setting, so nearly every project that could be a group project was a group project, and I was usually the leader in those. Not always by choice, but by the old, if I don't do it, we're probably not gonna get a perfect grade, and I need that perfect grade. I was definitely a shy one at first. You see, around 7th or 8th grade, I started wearing all black and would grow my hair out as long as my parents would let me. I don't understand what I was thinking back then. I was doing well in school, I had great friends both in and out of the Kingdom Hall, which is the Jehovah's Witnesses equivalent of a church, and maybe that was a part of it? I was starting to become shy. Fear that I couldn't express my own thoughts without getting in trouble because they might not be the most biblical of thoughts. And then the shyness compounded because of the going door to door aspect of being a Jehovah's Witness. And while I definitely was for a time genuinely interested in the Bible lessons part of meetings, I despised the before and after when everyone just talked and socialized. I hate small talk, and I'd be constantly prodded to join into it. And meanwhile, I was told to try to keep my friends to those who were also witnesses, which was okay. Like, I understand the logic there. And my best friend at the time was one also, though maybe we were only best friends because he was the only friend that I was allowed to be that close with. He was the only other boy my age that went to my school and the Kingdom Hall. So, of course, as much as we loved our time together, we drifted apart in high school. That happens. The other witness kids lived double lives. When not with their parents, they swore, told dirty and mean jokes. Some of them even got into drugs. And back in 7th grade, the one and only real bully I had in my life was one as well. Right, and I should be friends with them and not these other kids who are nice and that I relate to a lot more because their parents don't belong to the same religion. Got it. And so the emo phase followed. This was back when being a scene kid was super popular too, so it was emo scene, or at least as emo scene as I could be. Anyway, at this point in life, the combination of the ankle incident and the stress of all this angst and my mom being an amazing cook and baker, it led me to start putting on some pounds. Slowly but surely, the weight gain definitely started around the same time as puberty, which continued all throughout high school. I joined a robotics club. I also got way into game modding. I made several mods for Smash Bros. Brawl. I went to a few Brawl tournaments also. Won most of them. Life was pretty simple, all things considered. And it sure helped that my political worldview was never challenged because everyone around me was so gosh darn red. And the few that weren't were laughed out of existence. Overall though, high school was good. Besides the weight gain and asthma anyway. But at least I wasn't in the hospital every year anymore. This is also when I started getting really into Photoshop. It was such a fun tool to just mess around in, and so I started taking some photography courses. Eventually this evolved into video editing, and every opportunity I could, I would turn in an assignment in video format, be it a live recording or a voiceover presentation that I put together through Photoshop, and thus the groundwork was laid for what I would eventually become. At the same time though, I stopped playing Pokemon. I was an angsty teen, and Pokemon was a game for kids, so Diamond ended up being my last game for a while. I got rid of all my retro Pokemon stuff too, which I highly regret now. Overall though, my high school experience was how I assume most people's high school experiences are, extremely life-changing. I experienced a lot, and by the end, I wouldn't even recognize my freshman self. I was an organizer, a leader, I guess, or so they'd say. My closet wasn't solid black with the occasional Mario anymore. It had colors like gray and brown, baby steps. And during this time, I was introduced to a much broader world of content. I started playing M-rated games, ooh, and watching anime. a lot of anime. More anime than anything else for sure. I started actually doing a lot of my own independent Bible study and writing essays about it. And through all that, I just eventually decided I'm just gonna be me. Still someone I'd like to think of as a role model of a good Christian man. But without the gatherings several times a week and bugging people at their doors. Witnesses don't believe in hell as a torturous place, nor in immortal souls. And I agreed. You die, you're dead. That's all there is to it. You could be resurrected, but for most folks, you die, you're dead. And I just decided that if I die permanently, despite still being a nice, good person with a positive impact, then so be it. Embracing your mortality is how most other people live, and they seem fine with it. Also, still high school, I got another girlfriend, and this one, Amber, would go on to become my wife eventually, but that's much, much later. Anyway, college started, so I just went to a little community college while I figured out what I want to do. But nothing challenged me at all! I majored in business with a minor in computer science. I continued my video editing hobby. I made some AMVs and also got way into competitive Team Fortress 2. Anyway, as one does in college, I was exposed to many, many more viewpoints of the world. Granted, they weren't that radical. I was still in a county redder than most red states, but these were still enough to make me start to question how the world works and human nature in general, and how there are several different ways people think, like foundationally, not just opinions. Like, there's 100 different ways to go from A to B. No one method is inherently more human than the other. Humanity is complex. And also, I'm really stinking bored. If only there was a way for me to combine my love of video games with my love of learning. And then I discovered this small channel on YouTube, only like 5 or 6 videos at the time. It was Game Theory, and I fell in love. This was exactly my kind of thing. Tangential learning through video games. And eventually, MatPat, the creator of Game Theory, made a video about video game crossovers and ended the video asking his viewers to continue his research and make a big web out of it. And that's exactly what I did. But I didn't want to just be a crossover guy, so I started working on some other videos too. And that's how my channel got started. One of my earliest videos was about female armor in video games, and why it is the way that it is, which just screams about my priorities at the time. The little anti-SJW that I was. I was Lockstin. First part last name, last part first name. That was my username on most things for a very long time before this. And the show that I made, I decided to call Gnoggin, where gamers use their head. That's where the G comes from. Well, I really liked making these videos, so it became a hobby too. Took me over a year to reach my first 1,000 subscribers, but still, it was good fun. Very slow at first because I had to teach myself everything, so enter phase 1 of the channel. I was getting faster and faster at writing and editing together videos. I mean, I was a full-time student at a college that didn't challenge me whatsoever. I'd finish all my homework between classes, so I'd have nothing productive to do at home other than this. School continued, the channel continued to grow. I got my first job at a CVS pharmacy, which didn't last long because soon after I got a sort of dream job at a small news station just for the North State. KRCR. I was a production assistant, meaning cameraman, audio guy, editor, just on the team that does all the technical behind-the-scenes stuff. And as I expected, I got the job, not through college papers, but through a portfolio that showed that I know how to work a camera, work under pressure, and edit videos. So I decided to drop out of college right after the current semester, as well as quit CVS, eventually. And for a time, I had the most stressful 6 months of my life. But just before all that, I married my girlfriend of like half a decade and moved out of my parents' house. I could truly grow into an adult. And so I drove myself to near suicide. I was really overworking myself. College student, 2 jobs, first year of marriage, first year not living with my parents, and balancing a still growing YouTube channel all at the same time. I can't even tell you what games I played that year or what anime I watched because I'm pretty sure I didn't. I was so stressed. But eventually, I did some budgeting and figured out a way to put my business knowledge to use and start hiring some freelance editors to help with the channel, which did take a huge load off, but that only helped so much because my workaholic, gifted child brain made me want to use my newfound spare time to get more work done and produce more videos faster. I was burning out. And at the time, my computer desk was also in our bedroom because the apartment we had was small, and my wife can tell you just how late I'd stay up working at times. It was incredibly unhealthy. I was overweight to begin with, but this is the period of my life where I put on the most weight, by far. From the combination of all of the stress and the not being able to afford food besides dollar boxed pastas and fried rice. I felt bad about leaving the witnesses too. I was never baptized, which means I never got disfellowshipped. Modern problems, modern solutions, and all that. And honestly, I never got that into the faith exclusively because of all of the extrovertedness in there. But still, I did feel bad for my parents the whole time. Did they think I was a failure? Did I let them down? It took years to finally ask them about it and get all that cleared up, but this was all made worse at the time because the apartment complex we lived in was next door to the Kingdom Hall. So you can bet your butt every gathering I noticed there made me feel guilty, and my parents would often visit right after a meeting there, dressed up all nice, which also didn't help the guilt. Like, I had already accepted that this is who I am. Why am I feeling guilty about this? Definitely that drama-free lifestyle, wanting to please and appease everyone. And here I am letting down some of the people I care about most. It was hard. All of this happening at once. I did eventually pull through. I quit at CVS, dropped out of college to focus on KRCR on YouTube, which paid off. The channel kept growing, and I eventually could afford a better place, so we, along with 3 other college friends, rented a house together. And thus, we enter 2016, a major turning point year for my life. First of all, it's when I first decided I needed to start dieting. I had become around 370 plus pounds. All I knew was the calorie theory to weight loss, so that's what I did. Eat less, move more. It was a stressful struggle that never went anywhere. Even 2 years later, after all this, I was still in my mid-300s. This was also the year that Pokemon Sun and Moon were coming out. At this point, I hadn't played a Pokemon game since Diamond. But I was past the whole I'm too old for Pokemon thing. So with the new one coming out, I decided to go back and play all the ones I missed, and eventually created my big The End of Pokemon Theory series, which was my first video featured on YouTube, the first video on trending, and suddenly the channel exploded. But not just with any old viewers, it was exploded with Pokemon fans, likely some of you guys watching now. And suddenly, I noticed any of my Pokemon videos would get 2 to 4 times the views as my non-Pokemon videos. Mario videos still did okay, but not as good. So the channel slowly started morphing into a Pokemon channel. For about a year, Pokemon was a little under half of the content, and these days, it's more than 90% of it. The channel grew, and eventually I too quit KRCR to focus on YouTube full-time. This was my career. Eventually, with my now online job, my wife and I achieved our dream of moving out of this deep red hellhole of a dying desert city and moved up to a more balanced place with actual seasons, maybe even green. We moved up to Salem, Oregon, along with Josh, one of our housemates that was now also an editor for the channel, and still is. And about a year into living here, the channel was still growing. But eventually, my life hit another major roadblock, and all of a sudden, I got really, really sick. Incredibly sick. 3 months of ever-worsening symptoms. After nearly fainting when trying to stand up from the sofa, Josh decided I needed to go to the hospital. No more putting this off. I had considered going to a clinic a month ago, but I couldn't afford a doctor bill. Heck no, techno. I'll just power through it. I'll recover eventually. I could not have recovered eventually. At the hospital, it was determined that I had ketoacidosis. Months ago, my pancreas stopped functioning permanently. I was put into the ICU. Turns out I had recently developed type 1 diabetes. My body was unable to put sugar away where it needed to be, and the sugar was forming crystals in my blood and tearing me apart, body actually in shock, nearly shutting down due to the pH imbalance and blood sugar levels several times higher than normal. Another week, and I'd have been in a coma I might not have woken up from, the doctors told me. So I spent a week in the hospital, and formed more of some of my clearest memories. Life sure took a shift here. I spent my time in the hospital bed doing what I do, learning, reading article after article, scientific paper after paper, and just so so much about nutrition information that I had just never known before. Figured if I was going to be a diabetic, I was going to have to start learning all this stuff anyway. I learned about the keto diet. So I started that, and sure enough, I lost 170 pounds in a little over a year. And it was seemingly effortless. I never exercised. I hate doing that. I didn't even count calories. I was never hungry or had any of those other horrible weight loss side effects because there's no calorie deficit, which is what causes them. So I just sort of shrunk. I melted the weight off over a year. It really was that simple. And also during this time, I got to see the cruelty of the world firsthand. My monthly insulin costs, the medicine that I need in order to not die, cost me more than my rent. And that's with insurance. And suddenly, everything clicked. Is this empathy? I am lucky that I'm able to afford this thanks to sponsors and such. But what about those that can't? And this is just the case for type 1 diabetics. What about cancer patients? What about all those other health and non-related issues? Come to think of it, how do other countries care for their people? How do they use their taxes? Do they do as Jesus would do? Why is it that the conservative mindset in this country, the one almost synonymous with being Christian, is exactly the side fighting against doing what Jesus would do? I understood finally. And hilariously, those Republican Jesus memes were very helpful in this eye-opening process too. Thank you, meme makers. Politics is incredibly complicated, it turns out, but as long as empathy and caring for people, humans as a whole, is at the heart of the problem solving, that's all that matters to me. I guess it's sometimes hard to see the faults of a system unless you yourself fall into the cracks that those faults cause. Anyway, while I was in the hospital, actually, we bought a house. Like, we had checked it out months before and signed the papers, but we were finally given the keys. While I was in the hospital, the channel continued to grow. I got diagnosed and started taking some bipolar medication, which, oh my god, helped me with so many things and explains a whole lot about my past angst teenage years. And the channel kept growing. I got COVID really early on into the 2020 lockdown, which is the second sickest I've ever felt. And even now, a year later, has still left an impact on my lung function. So that's great. I made Lockstin LLC. We're an official business now, so I and a few of the freelancers are employees now too. And the channel is still growing. Slowly, but surely. So, sure enough, we passed 1 million subscribers. Thank you all so much. Obviously, I wouldn't be in this position right now if not for viewers like you. I really do enjoy what I do, and often get messages from others who say I've left an impact on them as well. And that makes me feel so good. I love you all. Already got smudges all over it. So like, will Noggin even be a thing in 10 more years? Will I have finally shifted focus onto other projects? Who knows? And that's what's great about living on a wet rock hurtling through space. You never know what's around the corner. And that's just fine. I'm only 27, and I've still got a world to see. Thank you all, once again. You mean more than my words can express because I'm really bad at expressing them. So let's just put a bunch of heart emojis on the screen as the end card pops up. You know, in high school I thought emojis were like the cringiest normal thing in the world, but then I realized nothing is cringier than thinking things are cringe. Like, who was I to think I was above basic human emotion and alternate methods of communication? Like, grow the heck up, me. Chill out. Balance in all things. Yeah.